Um, Picture a teenager, right? They're just staring at an algebra worksheet. And suddenly, they drop their pencil, cross their arms, and just like put their head right on the desk.
Yeah, we've all seen that exact moment.
Right. And you'd probably call that apathy or, defiance. Like it's a choice. We see someone giving up and we just assume it's a motivational deficit.
Exactly. But, well, what if I told you that behavior isn't a choice at all?
Wait, really?
Yeah. What if it's the exact same biological reflex as a computer crashing from having too many open browser tabs?
Oh, wow. Okay, I love that analogy. Welcome to our custom-tailored deep dive, everyone. Today we're unpacking a really fascinating stack of research spanning cognitive science, instructional design, and neuropsychology.
And the mission here is to answer one specific, incredibly frustrating question for you. Why do so many students completely shut down during math?
Okay, let's unpack this because, if you're a teacher or a parent listening to this, it really looks like they are just refusing to continue.
Right, but the research points out something completely wild. It's not that they won't continue thinking, it's that they physically cannot.
They literally can't.
Exactly, and to understand the mechanics of that, we have to look really closely at working memory.
Okay, so working memory.
Yeah, it's basically your brain's active cognitive workspace. It's where you temporarily store and, manipulate information. And it is shockingly limited.
How limited are we talking?
Like, a typical adult can hold only about 3 to 7 discrete units, or roughly 4 chunks of information at any given time.
Wow, just 3 to 7.
Yeah, and that information only stays there for about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Unless you're actively rehearsing it, it just decays and vanishes.
It's like, think about the last time someone rattled off a phone number to you, right?
Right.
And you had to scramble to find a pen.
Yes, perfect example.
That feeling of the numbers literally slipping out of your brain as you search for a piece of paper, that's your working memory decaying in real time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's gone.
It always makes me think of a computer. Like, your working memory is the computer's RAM, and your long-term memory is the hard drive.
Right, the hard drive is huge.
Yeah, you can keep a lifetime of memories, facts, and experiences there without any effort. But your RAM, that's just the active workspace for whatever app you are running right now.
And if you try to run, say, a massive video editing program on a 10-year-old laptop,
Yeah.
the RAM maxes out.
The system freezes, you get that spinning pinwheel of death.
Exactly. And mathematics is the cognitive equivalent of opening 50 heavy applications all at once.
Wait, really? Just math?
Well, the subject relies relentlessly on 2 specific subsystems of working memory. You have the visuospatial sketchpad,
The visuospatial sketchpad.
right, which is where you mentally hold and manipulate shapes, patterns, and spatial relationships. And then you have the phonological loop.
And what does that do?
That processes verbal instructions, numbers, and your internal self-talk. Math demands heavy simultaneous processing in both of these channels.
Okay, so if I'm reading a history chapter, I'm mainly just following a narrative flow, right? I'm building a story.
Yeah, exactly.
But if I'm looking at a math equation, how does that specifically crash the biological system faster than, say, reading about the French Revolution?
So the defining characteristic of math is something cognitive scientists call high-element interactivity.
High element interactivity.
Oh, yeah. In history, you can often understand a broader concept, even if you forget a specific date. The elements don't always interact.
Right, you still get the gist of the story.
Exactly. But in math, you are managing numerous, highly dependent elements simultaneously just to complete a single step.
Like in a multi-step algebra equation.
Yes. Think about it. A student has to retrieve basic arithmetic facts from their long-term memory. They have to maintain the sign of a variable, holding on to the fact that a number is negative.
Oh, man. Yeah, the negative signs always get dropped.
Right. And they have to track operations on both sides of the equal sign to keep the equation balanced. And while doing all of that, they have to conceptually plan their next logical move.
So let's visualize an equation, like 4 times parentheses x minus 3 equals 24.
Okay, perfect example.
You aren't just reading that left to right like a sentence. You are juggling the 4, the x, the negative 3, the rules of the distributive property, the function of the equal sign, and the 24.
All at the exact same time.
Wow. And if every single one of those elements is treated as a novel, separate unit by the student's brain,
Then that limited capacity of 3 to 7 units is breached instantly.
the working memory bottleneck is completely jammed.
Yes. The kid hasn't given up. Their cognitive RAM has simply crashed.
Okay, so if a student's brain is naturally hardwired with this tiny, fragile cognitive workspace, it begs the question, Are we designing learning experiences that respect that limit, or are we actively breaking it?
Right. And this brings in the work of educational psychologist John Sweller. He developed cognitive load theory.
Cognitive load theory.
Yeah. Sweller categorized the exact weight we put on the brain during learning into three distinct types of load.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first one is intrinsic load. This is just the inherent difficulty of the task itself. It's dictated entirely by that element interactivity we just talked about.
So the calculation of 2 plus 2 has a very low intrinsic load.
Exactly, because you only coordinate two simple elements. But solving a complex differential equation has a massive intrinsic load, just because the sheer number of interconnected rules is huge.
Right. So the math itself can just be inherently heavy. You can't really change that.
No, you can't. But the second type is where the instructional environment becomes the primary suspect.
Okay, now we're getting to the design part.
Yes, extraneous load. This is the unnecessary mental effort caused by poor instructional design. It's basically cognitive friction.
Cognitive friction. Can you give me an example?
A prime example is the split attention effect.
Okay, what is that?
Imagine a geometry worksheet, right? A complex diagram is on the left side of the page, and the text explaining the diagram is in a separate box on the right side.
Oh, yeah. I remember those.
The student has to constantly move their eyes back and forth between the text and the image. That physical and mental searching literally eats up working memory capacity.
Because the brain is burning RAM just to map the words to the picture.
Exactly. And research shows this actively lowers test scores.
Wow. Another one that stood out to me from the sources is the redundancy effect.
Oh, yes. That one is everywhere.
I see this in corporate presentations all the time, not just in classrooms. It happens when, a teacher puts a slide full of text on the board and then proceeds to read it aloud word for word.
Right, and we assume hearing it and seeing it reinforces the learning.
But mechanically, it creates modal interference. The visual reading channel and the auditory listening channel process the same information at, slightly different speeds.
They end up competing with each other.
Yeah. You create a traffic jam in the phonological loop, overloading the brain with redundant data.
What's fascinating here is that educators, or really anyone presenting information, often think they are helping by providing more context.
Right, making it relatable.
Yeah, they add real-world colorful details to word problems, or they put fun decorative animations on a slide. But cognitive load theory proves that every irrelevant piece of data directly subtracts from the third and most important type of load.
Which is?
Germane load.
Okay, wait. So are you saying we've been punishing students for getting distracted when the actual design of the worksheet or the teacher's lecture is what's eating up their brain space?
Pretty much, yeah.
But hold on, though. If we strip away all the context and we simplify every problem and remove all the extraneous details, aren't we just dumbing down the curriculum?
That's a common pushback.
Because, how do students ever learn to handle complex, messy, real-world problems if we artificially sterilize the learning environment?
It is a critical distinction. We are not talking about eliminating challenge. We are talking about managing the load during the initial acquisition of a new skill.
Oh, the initial acquisition. Oh, right.
Germane load is the productive mental effort directed at actual learning. It's the deep cognitive work of building mental schemas.
Those interconnected frameworks of understanding.
Exactly. So that new information can be safely transferred into the long-term memory hard drive. If a task's intrinsic load is naturally high, and we pile on extraneous load through a confusing layout,
The working memory overflows.
and when that happens, germane load drops to zero. No learning occurs at all. The student is just surviving the noise.
Wow. So once the schema is built, then you can introduce the messy, real-world complexity.
Yes,
Yeah.
because the foundational elements are already automated. They aren't taking up RAM anymore.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. But if I'm a teacher standing at the front of a classroom or a manager running a training session, I might not be able to see cognitive overload.
Right, you can't measure it visually.
Yeah, I can't look inside someone's head and check their germane load. I just see behavior. What does this system crash look like on the outside?
Well, when that bottleneck hits, you start seeing what researcher Peter Ligedahl classifies as studenting behaviors.
Studenting behaviors.
Yeah, these are self-preservation tactics. Students use them to escape the acute discomfort of thinking when their cognitive load has exceeded its capacity.
So they're just trying to relieve the pressure.
Exactly. The moment the RAM maxes out, students will stop, guess blindly, or raise their hand to ask for help immediately.
Not to actually learn the material.
Right, not to learn, but to bypass the bottleneck entirely. by getting the teacher to do the thinking for them.
The specific avoidance tactics mentioned in the sources are so universally recognizable.
Oh, absolutely.
You have slacking, which is the most obvious one, just a transparent refusal to pick up the pencil.
Right, just checking out completely.
But then you have stalling. This is the student who suddenly needs to sharpen their pencil for the 5th time, or desperately needs to go to the bathroom.
Or decides this is the exact moment they need to aggressively color code their physical folders.
Yes, and then there's faking. This is an art form. The student flips through a textbook, furrows their brow, and looks intensely academic.
While actually producing zero mathematical output.
Exactly. But the most insidious tactic of all is mimicking.
Mimicking is huge. A teacher demonstrates a complex algebraic process on the board, right?
Yeah.
And the student blindly copies the steps down, moving the symbols exactly as the teacher did, without grasping a single underlying logical concept.
They are merely replicating a visual pattern.
Just to get the right answer at the bottom of the page and relieve the cognitive pressure.
Mimicking is exactly like paint by numbers. You follow the strict rules, you put the blue paint in the designated blue shape, and you produce a picture that looks exactly like the teacher's masterpiece.
That's a great way to put it.
But if the parameters change even slightly, like if someone takes away your numbered guide or asks you to paint a slightly different landscape, the whole system breaks down.
Because you don't actually understand what you're doing.
Exactly. You freeze. You don't understand color theory or shading or brushstrokes. You just mimicked a procedure.
And taking that paint by numbers idea further, when the test asks them to mix a new color, they experience actual biological panic.
Biological panic over a math test.
Yes. We have to understand that this shutdown or avoidance is a neurological protective mechanism. When cognitive load spikes beyond a manageable threshold, the brain interprets that overload as a threat.
A literal threat.
Yeah, the stress response triggers a fight, flight, or freeze reaction.
Wait, so we're talking about actual biological panic? The exact same physical system that responds to a physical threat in the wild is responding to, like, a fraction on a piece of paper.
That is exactly what happens. The amygdala, which acts as the brain's threat detection center, fires up.
And when the amygdala fires up...
It literally cuts off access to the prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex is the logic, reasoning, and executive functioning center of the brain.
Wow. So the student is biologically locked out of the exact cognitive tools they need to solve the math problem.
Yes. The shutdown is not a choice. It is an architectural feature of the human brain under stress.
Okay, but this raises a question for me. If everyone has the same limited working memory, why do some students hit this overload threshold and shut down so much faster than the kids sitting right next to them?
That's the million-dollar question.
Why does one student's RAM crash on problem 2 while another breezes through the whole page?
The research points to a massive hidden culprit here: foundational gaps.
Foundational gaps, like what?
Well, it comes down to automaticity. Mirroring foundational skills, whether it's basic multiplication facts or a conceptual understanding of how fractions work, drastically increase the intrinsic cognitive load of any new task.
Ah, okay.
When a fact is automated, when it has been successfully mapped into a schema and stored in long-term memory retrieving, it consumes virtually zero working memory. The brain just knows it instantly.
I see the mechanism now. If a student is trying to solve a multi-step algebraic equation, but they lack automaticity with basic multiplication, they are in trouble.
Deep trouble.
If they have to use their fragile, limited working memory just to calculate 7 times 8 by counting on their fingers or doing repeated addition in their head,
They hit the bottleneck instantly.
yeah, they're using their precious 3 to 7 units of RAM on basic arithmetic. They have absolutely zero cognitive workspace left to process the higher level logic of isolating a variable.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, students who missed crucial foundational instruction, or students with learning differences like dyscalculia, often stay trapped in that working memory-dependent stage.
Every single math problem is an exhausting cognitive marathon for them.
Yes, they are perpetually trying to run modern software on outdated hardware.
And hitting this bottleneck repeatedly, day after day, year after year, it doesn't just cause bad grades, it creates a physiological trauma loop.
It absolutely does.
Math anxiety is heavily discussed in the research, and it's framed not just as a feeling of nervousness or dislike for a subject.
Right. It's much more than that.
It is a transitory physical disruption of working memory.
Yes. When a student panics, their inner monologue starts racing. They think, I'm going to fail, or everyone else gets this and I'm stupid.
And those intrusive anxious thoughts act as literal background noise.
Exactly. That internal voice is actually occupying the phonological loop we discussed earlier.
Okay, so the brain is literally using its math processing hardware to process the anxiety instead.
Yes, the anxiety co-ops and shrinks the available space in working memory.
That is wild. It's a brutal, self-fulfilling feedback loop.
Totally.
You lack foundational fluency, which leads to a failure to understand the current lesson. That failure creates deep anxiety. The anxiety physically occupies your phonological loop, actively reducing your working memory capacity,
And that reduced capacity guarantees more failure on the next problem.
leading to an ultimate, complete behavioral shutdown.
This is why telling a struggling student to just try harder or focus is functionally useless.
Right, because you are asking them to use cognitive resources that have been entirely hijacked by their own stress response. So what does this all mean for how we approach education, or really how we approach anyone trying to learn a complex new skill?
It means we need a massive paradigm shift.
Students are not failing due to a lack of effort. They aren't failing because they are defiant, and they certainly aren't failing because they lack a genetic math brain.
No, they are hitting rigid biological cognitive limits.
But if these limits are biological, I mean, it might feel like we are powerless.
It might feel that way, but crucially, as cognitive load theory reveals, these limits are often created or severely amplified by our own instructional environments.
We are putting artificial barriers in front of the bottleneck.
Exactly. We are making it worse.
So how do we fix the system?
Hmm.
The takeaway from our stack of sources is incredibly clear. If we want genuine mathematical thinking or deep thinking in any discipline, we have to work with human biology, not against it.
We must design for cognitive capacity.
And what does that look like in practice?
It means employing specific, targeted strategies. We need to use just-in-time scaffolding.
Just-in-time scaffolding, not just-in-case scaffolding.
Exactly. This means providing support only when a student actually hits an impasse, rather than just-in-case scaffolding, which removes all the productive struggle and lowers the germane load too much.
Right. You still want them to build the schemas.
Yes. It also means physically redesigning materials, integrating text and visual diagrams closely together to eliminate that split attention effect.
It also means using worked examples for novices, right?
Oh, worked examples are incredibly effective.
Because instead of throwing a student into a complex problem and letting them blindly search for an answer, which burns out their RAM instantly, you show them a fully completed step-by-step solution.
Right, you remove the pressure of finding the answer so their brain can allocate all its working memory to understanding the underlying rules and connections.
I also love the 3 reads protocol mentioned in the research. It's a routine specifically designed to slow down impulsivity and manage that initial spike in cognitive load.
The 3 reads protocol is a perfect mechanical solution to the bottleneck.
How does it work?
During the first read, the student is instructed to just read the problem to understand the context or the story, completely ignoring the numbers.
So they aren't allowed to solve anything yet.
No, not at all. Then, during the second read, they identify the quantities and relationships.
Okay.
And by the third read, they finally figure out the actual mathematical question being asked.
Ah, so it intentionally sequences the cognitive load.
Exactly. It prevents the working memory from being overwhelmed by context, numbers, and logic, all at the exact same time.
Here's where it gets really interesting for you as you listen to this. This deep dive isn't just about middle school math. Understanding your own cognitive bottleneck applies to everything you do.
Absolutely everything.
If you are trying to learn a complicated new software system at work, or you are reading a dense financial report and you suddenly feel yourself wanting to reach for your phone, wanting to stall or fake it or check out, recognize what is happening.
Your working memory is maxed out.
You aren't lazy. You just need to systematically reduce your extraneous load. Clear your physical environment, close a few literal browser tabs, and chunk the information into smaller pieces.
It is a universal human architecture. Whether you are a struggling fifth grader or a CEO, we all have that exact same limited RAM.
That leads us to a final, really provocative thought from the source material to leave you with. We've spent this entire time talking about how our brains rely so heavily on building internal, automated schemas like math facts or procedural rules in our long-term memory.
Right. We have to automate those basics to free up our working memory for complex, deep thought.
If you don't automate the foundational knowledge, you never have the capacity to think critically or creatively about the bigger picture.
But the sources introduce some emerging research on generative AI.
Yes, think about how we work today. We are increasingly delegating our foundational thinking to AI.
We really are.
We ask it to summarize dense articles, to calculate spreadsheets, to write the initial structure of our ideas. If AI becomes our system zero, a technological layer that pre-processes information before it even reaches our conscious thought, what happens to our internal schemas?
This raises an important question. Are we augmenting our cognitive capacity by offloading the heavy extraneous lifting to a machine? Or are we risking what the researchers call cognitive debt?
Cognitive debt, wow.
Yeah. If we stop doing the necessary productive struggle of building those mental models ourselves, do we lose the biological infrastructure needed to think deeply altogether?
It's something to seriously mull over. If we constantly bypass the bottleneck by letting an algorithm do the chunking, we might forget how to process the data ourselves.
We might just become dependent on it.
So the next time you see someone shut down, or you feel yourself shutting down, remember, it's not a broken spirit. It's just too many browser tabs open. Close a few, build your schemas, and see what you're truly capable of.